ready to start this first session. Welcome, everyone. Bienvenue. Bonjour.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
It's gonna be a hell of a ride.
And
Yes, all the
let's okay, so we are going to have a really quick check-in question, everyone. So please let's here we go. Let's be present in this first session. We are going to welcome everyone and ask you. Our check-in question for today is, in the last 2 days, and I will ask you to please write in the chat, in the last 2 days, when did you feel the most powerful? Please write in the chat. You can have a small sentence, when in the last 2 days you feel the most powerful. And some really quick housekeeping announcements. Please rename yourself over there with your name and your country so that we can all be aware. Let's remember that if it's possible, let's keep our video on and our microphones in mute so that there's no background noise as we go on. So if everyone is ready, and I can see people writing in the chat, thank you. Thank you for writing in the chat. We have some nice replies here. Please, I will ask my dear colleague, Liz, to welcome everyone to our first session. Liz.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sam. And warm welcome, everyone. Welcome if you're joining us for the first time, and welcome back if this is maybe your second or third course with the Boost community. We're really excited to launch our Boosting Leadership to Activate Communities course. This is the third iteration of the course. We are also offering the course in French. So if you are Francophone, we do ask that you click on the little globe at the bottom of your screen, and you can listen to today's session in French. And Sam just put up some instructions. If you need some help, you can just read through these instructions in order to access the session in French. We'll also share it out through the chat as well in case you lose access to this. And thanks to Luke for being our interpreter for today's session. Just a few other logistics. You can engage in dialogue with your peers and our session facilitators through the chat button. So we also ask that you use this forum to ask questions throughout the session. You can also use the reactions button to raise your hand if you have a question when we open it up for kind of Q&A after the presentations. And then last but not least, we do ask that you make sure that your first name and your family name, as well as your country, is recorded in your name, and you can just right-click on your name in order to rename yourselves. Sometimes folks come in as mobile phones or laptops, so we want to make sure that we record your attendance for today's session. Next slide. I just want to quickly introduce the Boost team that will be supporting you all through this course. My name is Liz Colway. I'm the Director of Community Building and Digital Engagement. You've probably seen a number of emails from me. So I'll be here for the next 7 weeks as you all are participating in this course. I'm also joined by Elizabeth and Aisha, who are also part of the Boost team. You'll probably see them on the Boost Learning Group and in the Telegram channel. So we're all really excited to support you on this learning journey. Next slide. I think I'm going to hand things back over to Sam. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Liz. So the other part of the team that is joining today and in the next coming sessions, I'm introducing to yourself Rita Akiki. Rita, if you can please wave and say hello to everyone. Nko, please say also hi to everyone joining from Johannesburg, South Africa. We also have Dr. Pedja Stojic joining from Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you, Pedja. Myself, Sam Gonzalez, joining from Mexico. We also have Pamela. Pamela, please also say hi to the team. And Musa, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today. We are both the PPH and the ACA team, and we'll be with you working together during the next couple of weeks. So nice to be here with y'all. Pedja, please.
Yeah. Welcome everybody. My name is Pedja Stojcic, and it's so good to be with all of you in these numbers. And if you can, for a second, like if you do have an option to turn on your video, it will be really nice to just see a couple of faces instead of seeing those black rectangles. And we know that the internet is sometimes not good, but if you do have an option to turn on the video, let's do it just for a second so we can see each other. And if you can hold it, like, oh, there you go. There's some lovely faces. Well, it's good to see you all right now, and really, if we're doing this for the third time, and this notion of adaptive leadership and community organizing mixed together turns out to be really useful for immunization professionals, and more every year we see more people joining this program and applying, and then trying to learn with us. But it's one thing that what we want this program, but the other, what are your intentions for this course? And as I walk you to the next slide, feel free to put in a chat. What do you want to get out of this? Like, what's your intention to join Boosting Leadership program? And you can see your colleagues as well answering that, and we'll see some both French and English answers. So while you're putting that in a chat, I wanted to give you a couple of intentions that we have. We really do believe that leadership and learning leadership and community organizing can only happen in a positive learning environment. So we want to create that type of environment, and that will actually require a lot of interaction with many of you. So get ready to hear from us, inviting you into the conversation, and dialogue and conversation. This is not going to be a webinar interaction course. The other intention that's really important for us is that it's not a technical or technological course or knowledge-based course. It's a skill-based course. So we will ask you to practice and do a lot of skills, starting from today, where you're gonna define your gap and do some other things together in the program. But think about it as like, this is almost like a place where I can test some of the skills and learn new skills and practice those new skills in the program. And then finally, our main intention is really to enable you to navigate through difficult spaces for immunization professionals, and really turbulent waters, if you put it that way. And we hope that these skills will enable you to do that. In terms of the expectations, the 90-minute sessions that we do every Thursday, starting this Thursday, are mandatory. That is something that you're expected to join if you want to get certified in the course. There's usually a pre and post assignments. We will have short, like usually half an hour to 45 minutes pre-assignment, and then a little homework after the session. Again, in the spirit of learning these skills through the practice. That's what we want to do. We do expect active participation and seeing wonderful, amazing faces on the screen. So as much as you can do that, it will be easier for us, and your colleagues would like to see you as well. It's not just about us, but it's about us seeing each other. Having said that, we understand that internet connections sometimes not be perfect, and if you have to turn it off for that reason, that is absolutely fine. And then, finally, in terms of certification, we offer a certificate for this program, and it's based on both attendance, so you attending the sessions, 90-minute sessions, and then as well completing all the assignments, short assignments that we are sharing with you. Next slide, Seth. Yeah, so I will pass back to Liz to talk a little bit about the Boost community and online platform that we are using.
Great, thanks so much, Pedja. So by now you probably received a number of emails from myself and my team just regarding the Boost Learning Group. So this is a group on the Boost Community platform, so that boostcommunity.org, where we'll be hosting our materials from this course. We'll also be having conversations. We have a forum set up so that you can respond to any homework assignments there. We also just have a lot of details around other assignments. You can converse with some of your peers. You can also connect with course facilitators on the platform. So we do encourage you to take advantage of that learning group. There's a lot of information there, and likely if you have a question, you can probably find an answer on that platform. Of course, we also have our Telegram channel, which we'll use for quick reminders and also to let you know whenever we release the pre-work for each week and reminders of homework assignments that are due. And then last but not least, in a couple weeks, we'll set up a course tracker so that you could check to see if you've been turning in your assignments, and just to make sure to keep yourself kind of accountable and to make sure that you're on track to receive that certificate of completion. If you have any questions, I'll stay on a few minutes after the call ends in case you need any help troubleshooting, whether logging into the platform or accessing that learning group. I think with that, maybe next slide. And I think I'm passing it either back over to Peja or Nook.
I think Nook will take it up.
Great. Thank you, Liz, and Peja and Sam. It's so wonderful to see so many people on the call from different countries and different nationalities. So mine is to just say, you know, we have some, as we start, you know, introducing ourselves, setting the space that we're going to be in the next couple of weeks. It's always good to have agreements on how we're going to share the space, what we call norms and commitments. So some of the things that fit into that box of norms and commitments is ensuring that we're going to start on time and end on time. That's a commitment that we are making, that this is important for us. It's a priority for us, all of us on this call. So we'll start on time and we'll end on time. And also we'll step up and step back. What that means is we'll show opportunity for us to do so, and look for opportunities to engage, because this is a learning platform, and it's really upon you to get out what you put in, right? So please feel very free to either chat with us on the chat box, or raise your hands, or interrupt us if you want to share some thoughts. That's all welcome. And participate with the learning mindset. Even as facilitators, we're here to learn with you, along with you. So please, this is a learning space, and we're here to learn. So you're welcome to teach as well, and to share, and try out new things. Adult learning, which is what we're doing, is all about practice. It's not facilitators talking at you and sharing slides. We're really in a conversation about leadership here. So those are some of the before we move, Sam. I wanna see if there are any norms that our colleagues, the participants, would like to add to these 4 norms that I've put here. So feel free to put those in the chat box and I'll read them out loud. What norms and commitments do you think are important to create the space for us to learn, for all of us to learn? What should we add to these norms and commitments? Please feel free to put that in the chat. Respect each other's views. That's very important. Be present. Thank you, Rita. Le respect. My French is terrible. Okay, mute mics unless we have to speak. Yes, unmuted mics can be very disruptive, so that's very good. Please let's mute ourselves when we're not talking. Be punctual, wonderful, and keep them coming. Thank you so much. This helps all of us to set these expectations. And so as we start, we want to just give you an overview of the entire course. We will be together for the next 7 weeks. And during those 7 weeks, we want to understand leadership and how to exercise it. As many as there are definitions of leadership, you know, there are folks that challenge those definitions. So we want to learn together and understand this thing called leadership. What is it and how do we exercise it? Learn to lead adaptively. It is an organizing and adaptive leadership course. So we want to also understand what that's about. Understand your leadership edge to mobilize others. Leadership is a team sport, right? It's you can't do it alone. That's the same with organizing. So how do we mobilize others and understand this leadership edge that we have, that we need to sharpen? And also identify the different types of challenges that we have. We'll be talking a lot about how challenges, you know, emerge and how we define and frame challenges and how that's part of the work that we're here to do. Learn how to connect storytelling to our work, very important. Some of you have taken the storytelling course and we'll be doing some of that work here. It's very, very exciting part of the course that I enjoy, storytelling. And we'll learn how to identify stakeholders and intentionally build relationships, understanding that leadership is about relationships. It's really about engaging other people in, you know, doing the work that we do. People power strategy, you also have to have a plan, you have to have tactics, you know. So we're going to be asking those questions. Who has the power? Do people have the power? Do you have the power? And lastly, and importantly too, celebration as a leadership principle, very important. And we'll get into that as we wrap up our course by week 7. So that's the overview of the course. Today, we start with this issue of understanding leadership and how to exercise it. So without further ado, there are a few concepts that we'll be sharing today. And the first one, the first concept that I want to share with you is this concept of getting on the balcony. If you've done some of the pre-work or some of the courses on the Boost platform or WHO platform in other cases, you'll have come across this idea of getting on the balcony. So one of the first leadership skills that we talk about is helping people get on the balcony. And so the imagery or the metaphor we're using is a balcony and a dance floor. To play with this metaphor a bit, you have a balcony, a mental balcony, and you have a dance floor, right? And to explain this a bit further, on the dance floor, what's happening on the dance floor? You're worried about dance floor sort of things, right? Like dancing to the right tune in your workplace, not stepping on other people's toes, you know, communicating in a way. I saw already in the chat someone speaking about a colleague who shouted at them, or there was a conflict that happened. You know, those are the sort of things that happen on the dance floor. The day-to-day choices that we make. So let me say a little about what this means. So the idea of getting on the balcony is really an age-old idea of getting reflection, perspective in the midst of action, right? It's a metaphor for getting above the fray, as it were. And in different cultures, you know, you'll hear people speak about having an eagle's eye view, a bird's eye view, right? Or if you are into sports, we're going into the World Cup soon. You hear, you know, people speak about, you know, the sports superstars that they have a field sense, a court sense. They're able to play their position and know where the opposition is, know where the defenders are, know where their teammates are, where the goalkeepers are, and still situate themselves in the action, right? So it's about understanding and getting a view of a situation and the responses of people from a mental balcony, from where you can actually see the patterns on the dance floor, your emotional responses or reactions, and those of other people as well. And so there are many ways that you've probably heard of this concept, you know. So in this, for these purposes, we're going to call it getting on the balcony. And so that's a practical example of getting on the balcony. But there are also, you know, examples like taking a team retreat, right? Or taking a walk to reflect, you know, or prayer. That's getting on the balcony as well. You know? So these are all modes of getting on the balcony. Just stepping away from the pressures of our lives, particularly our organizational lives, to keep us focused, that tend to keep us focused on the dance floor. You know, things like email and some of these conflicts that you've already named in the chat. So these are all different ways that people get distance from the problem at hand. And oftentimes that is where we get insight and creativity from. So you'll hear Peja and myself every now and then talk about, let's get on the balcony. What's really happening here? You know, how do we look at reframing, you know, some of the challenges that we bring about? That's the language that we're going to be using. So it's very important, if you're going to mobilize people to tackle tough challenges and lead consequential change in your personal and organizational life, it's very important that you have these moments to try and spend a little bit of time, pause, get on the balcony before you get on the dance floor and make interventions. Because the dance floor is where the fun is, right? That's where we want to spend most of our time. So, you know, these patterns that you recognize when you're on the balcony are really valuable, particularly for leading change. So what we want to do during this course is cultivate that skill set of being both on the balcony and on the dance floor at the same time. You know, in other words, seeing the big picture, seeing the patterns, and naming some of your challenges and being informed by that to make interventions and decisions on how we would like to take the next step. So I want to pause now and have a look at the chat box. I saw a hand as well to see if there are any reactions or reflections before we proceed. Raul, I see your hand. Do you have a question? Raul? I don't know if Raul can hear me, but you can chat in the chat box, Raul. Do you have a question there? Or any of the other colleagues? Is there something that's resonating with you or something that you'd like to ask? You love the concept. Wonderful. That's a good start. Okay. All right, shall we move on? Okay, let's move on. There's an exercise, like Pedro said, this is, this learning style that we're employing here is about engaging. It's about showing up. It's about being present and taking part in the learning process. So let's do a mental activity to give you a sense of what it feels like, right? To get on the balcony. Now, on your screen is a pattern. It's a picture of something. And I want to ask if you've seen this pattern before. Please save the punchline for everybody else. Can you tell what this is? What do you observe? What do you see in this picture? Please put it in the chat box. If you know what it is, someone says it's a cow or a bull. Just take a guess. I don't expect you to actually know what you're looking at. What do you see? Let's just see what others are noticing in this picture. People, birds, a face, a bird, a tree. Okay, Sam, let's show them the next slide. Can you see now what that is? It's a face or a head. Is it a bit clearer? A bit more distinct? Last guesses, people. What is this? What are we looking at here? Raoula says it's some people. Susanna says it's a sky. Okay, a cow, there you go. So when you first heard that it's a cow, can you see the cow? Can people see the cow? Go back, Sam. And Sam, I want you to use your cursor here. Some people don't see the cow. I don't want to leave anyone behind. Okay, so please use your cursor. Can you show us the eyes of the cow using your mouse there, so people can you see the eyes, people? It's a cow's face, yes. Show us the ears, Sam. Okay, that Sam is showing us the left ear of the cow. Go to the right one. There you go, and the mouth. Ah, there you go. Christian says, yeah, now I see. Now I see. So that's right. You see it now. This is, so you can play with this later on. But again, I just want you to show you, this example to show the feeling that you get, what happens when you're shifting from the dance floor to the balcony. It's that moment, that was just described here, that it's, yes, now I see it. It's that clarity, that flip of a switch, right? You get some relief. That's what it's like to be on the balcony. That's just a mental example of what it feels like. Of course, we could use other examples, but this is because, we're looking at the same thing, but other people see birds, other people see trees, others, we're looking at the same thing, but there's so many interpretations of what it is. I'm telling you, it's a cow, it's a black and white pixelated picture, right? So there are very different interpretations of what it is. The point isn't to get the right one. The point is to offer interpretations that help as many people as possible to engage in the moment, right? We'll try this, on when we do some exercises throughout the weeks that are coming, and we'll do more of this kind of work. So that's the feeling of being on the balcony, right? So this leadership lab that we're in, let's go to the next slide, Sam, is a space, right, where we have the opportunity to get some perspective. And the most important thing here to note or to take away from this exercise is that, first of all, not everybody sees what you see, right? And that's important. But it's more important to interpret, right, what you're seeing and use as many interpretations and bring in, if for instance, you are in a meeting, I do this a lot when I'm in a meeting. When we're talking about a potentially, polarizing issue, let's say we're talking about vaccines and vaccine hesitancy, and we're discussing why people don't want to get vaccinated. Very contentious, very conflictual. I have an opinion, but I want to make sure that I get as many opinions, even some opinions that I don't agree with, into the room, to try and get interpretations of what might be happening before I get into intervention mode. And the mistake that we normally make is we move from, even if we're running campaigns, and here, a campaign is something that we're going to be coming back to often. When we're running campaigns, we make the mistake of observing a set of data or something that's happening or a phenomenon, and then going straight into intervention without really understanding or trying to interpret, what's going on. So observation, as I said a moment ago, is just taking in all the data. What's going on? Is that a cow? Are there birds there? And if you're in a community, it's about observing what's happening in the community. What's the mathematical data coming from our surveys, right? But also, where's the resistance coming from? Why are people resisting? What are they thinking? And having all of that, and then having that inform your intervention, right? So it's very important to look at things from different vantage points, from a balcony. So observing, interpreting, and intervening, this cycle is very important. And even after intervening, right? Even after doing something, you get data back, right? Sometimes you get people pushing back at your intervention. That's also a lesson. You try a campaign, you're going to create more data from that intervention, and find out what's important to people. Who else can we involve, in this cycle? Again, it's a leadership skill to get all this data, and not just for the sake of getting the data, but informing our interventions. And I'll speak to this next, this idea of intervening as a leadership practice. But before I get there, I just want to see that folks are still with us. Any thoughts? Just wrapping up this idea of getting on the balcony and observing, interpreting, and intervening. Only with good observation can one interpret and participate. That's a good one, Ismaili. Great. Okay. All right. So next slide, please. So, in doing your interpretations, right? You're observing, you're interpreting, you're doing interventions. When you stay a bit in that interpretation space, you want to make sure that you don't just make interpretations that are technical. You will talk a bit later in the course about the difference between technical and adaptive, right? You want to make sure that the interpretations that you're making are not just simplistic, right? You want to make sure that it's not benign interpretations, that they're a bit conflictual. For instance, if a benign interpretation, if you're looking at your screen right now, you could say that Peja and I have the same hairstyle, right? That's true, but that doesn't really tell you anything about us, right? So a conflictual interpretation could be something to do with gender, something to do with, that brings in more data into the room than you wouldn't have, right? Good interpretations are not just individual. They're not about people. They're about the system, right? So don't make it about the person. Make it, about the system. Look at other data points that might speak to a larger systemic view, right? And next slide, Sam. So you recognize, this graphic from the pre-work that we asked you to do. And, the leadership gap is this idea. This is a new concept that I want to share with you again. So we're talking about getting on the balcony. We're talking about observing, interpreting, and intervening, but all to close the gap that you have. And the charge for this course that we're doing is to think about a leadership gap that you're trying to narrow. And in the gap, again, you're stepping on the balcony and you're saying, okay, here's my community. Here's the state of vaccination coverage, or here's the state of vaccine equity or inequity. Here are stakeholders who are bought in or stakeholders that are not in this situation. What's the current reality, right? Can you describe that for yourself in such a way that, when you describe it for other people, it makes sense. So what's the situation? What's the persistent problem that you're facing? That's your current reality. And then what's your aspirational state? What's the future that you're trying to move to, right? So all this balcony stuff that we're talking about, it's all in the aid of trying to close this gap, right? Your aspirational state, what's the future state? Is it 100% coverage? Is it 2% more coverage? Is it creating more partners? So we want you to be able to articulate this leadership gap that you're trying to narrow through this course. And it's going to create a bit of tension, right? Because you're here, your current reality, and you want to get over there. And there's this leadership gap in between. Actually, anytime you have tension between where you are and where you want to be, that's actually a leadership moment. It calls for you. It's an opportunity to stop and say, okay, how can I maybe use some of the skills that we're going to develop more, effectively to close this gap? Maybe narrow it. Sometimes you're not able to close the gap entirely. To make progress is just narrowing the gap a bit, right? So what I'd like to do now is pause and invite folks from the audience to think about the gap that you submitted coming into the course, right? And I'm going to ask for a volunteer here for the purposes of learning to share the gap that you submitted, so we can kind of talk through it. The rest of us will get on the balcony and try to help you, articulate your gap better. And for the rest of the colleagues, for the next couple of weeks, that's what we're going to be coming back to, refining this leadership gap that you're identifying for yourself. So I'd like to ask for a volunteer. We don't have much time, so I'd like to ask for a volunteer to state the gap that they submitted. Is there a volunteer? Let me check the chat box. Who would like to volunteer? Lead us. It's a leadership course. Yes, you can suggest a new gap. Suzanne? Suzanne from Lebanon. Rita, your neighbor. Suzanne, do you want to share? Okay, let's unmute Suzanne. And Koome, I see you as well.
Hello.
Koome there we go. Okay, is that Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne from Lebanon, yes.
From Lebanon. Okay. Just a brief introduction, Suzanne. Tell us who you are and where you are. And
I'm a community pharmacist. And also I'm a healthcare management master's graduate. The problem I'm going to speak about is mainly we are facing now in Lebanon is mainly about giving generic medication instead of trade medication.
Can we hear Suzanne? Sorry, Suzanne, just a moment. Can we hear Suzanne? Yes.
Yes. The problem is mainly now.
No, not really.
Okay, Suzanne.
Is my voice clear now?
Yes.
Is it clearer?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. The main problem we are facing now is about generic medication. There is a great resistance here in Lebanon to take generic medication. We usually use medication with trade names that are imported from outside Lebanon. And due to the economic crisis, now we are transferring to give generic medication that are manufactured here in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
As a community pharmacist, we are facing great resistance from the community, from people, patients, and even from doctors or physicians. So what if I want to say the current reality is what I described now. My aspiration is to have more acceptance for this, more trust in this generic medication, to convince the patients, and before to convince the physicians that these are better to be prescribed, and even to have some laws that make the insurers only give money back for the generic medication and not for the trade ones, because there's a great difference in prices. I don't know if I'm clear. This is the gap. This needs very great work and huge work to have to be able to narrow this gap. And this is
Suzanne,
not only
Can I ask you to put that in a sentence? What is the current state? Just one sentence.
There's no acceptance, or there's low acceptance for generic medication.
Okay. And then let me ask you a second question. And the question is, how does closing this gap or narrowing this gap connect to your sense of purpose or meaning? Why do you care?
First, this medication will be more available to the patient. We will not be suffering from the absence of the medication, number one. Number two, it will be more beneficial to Lebanon, because we pay too much for medication. If we go to generic medication, the medication prices will be very low, and the community will be paying too much less money. And this will be very good for the finance of Lebanon.
Okay. And so what's the aspirational state? What do you want to see happen? What's the ideal, audacious, courageous thing that you want to see happening?
First, to be more acceptance for generic medication, more trust, and the reimbursement of only generic medication by insurers.
Wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me ask the rest of the colleagues. Was that clear? The current reality that Suzanne is facing and the aspirational state? I'll take one or two responses. As Mulu Ken says yes, Bashir says no. Let me hear from Bashir and Mulu Ken. Why do you say yes? Why do you say no? Bashir wants clarity. Clarity on what? On the current state or the aspirational state? Bashir. On the current state. Okay. So let me ask one of the people that says yes to respond to Bashir. If it's clear to you, what is the current state?
Okay, so I said yes because I understand the Lebanese situation in that they do have low acceptance for generic medication, especially in the political elites. So that's the current situation, and her aspiration and her need interest in that is because she really understood the community's need in that they are financially constrained. So that's what leader is about, understanding the people's need and serve the needy people. So that's how I understood.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you. So that's a brilliant example, and thank you, Suzanne, for leading us so well and offering that example. The gap you're articulating is clear, right? It's about focusing in on something very specific and something that you care about, that speaks to your purpose. It's not helpful to say, I want to reach all the children in Nigeria, right? Yeah, that's great, but how are you going to do it, right? So you want to frame your gap in such a way that it recognizes all those smart ideas around goals, but also that it's something that you can communicate to others in a way that Suzanne just demonstrated, in a way that other people understand, because in the end you are trying to organize people, rally people around closing this gap. You're not going to do it alone, right? If you are able to do it alone, then there's no need for leadership, is there? When there's a need for leadership is when you have this challenge that you alone cannot close that gap by yourself. So do we have time for, I'm looking at Pedro here, do we have time for another example? Okay, great. I'll take one more example. I think I named someone for a second example. I see Roshan.
Okay.
Who was that who was off just now? Who was
Right.
speaking?
Yeah, I want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hey, I'm Roshan from Pakistan.
Hi.
So what I understand from Inspiration is like we have a BHC, Basic Health Unit, where our routine immunization rate is about 80 to 90%, and we have a regular surveillance system. But when we asked them for COVID vaccination, we saw the mistrust of community leaders, and this is the persisting problem here. But as we have a good community mobilization team, we worked on it, and we are able to make sure that the people are accepting the vaccination. However, the coverage of that area is only it's in a small area of a pre-urban site of a small province, and that's an inspiration. If the whole system or multiple people are doing the similar thing, they can achieve a good acceptance. Am I clear? Am I able to clear it?
You're clear. Did you all get that? Did you hear Roshan?
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So for me, what I understand from aspiration is to believe that you can achieve, and for that routine immunization we achieved, but for COVID vaccination we are not able to achieve. But as a leader, my vision is to be achieved the
high level of vaccine acceptance there.
Okay, okay. And why, again, the same question that I asked Suzanne, Roshan, why do you care so much about this issue of coverage?
Right, right, because we saw in Pakistan where the poverty, low social economical level, the people are getting education, using different kind of gadget and aware themselves for economical point of view, but they never care about, they never had a good health seeking behavior. And when a child is small and he has to, but the parent should has give this right to the child to have vaccinated. And you know, in those community where the high child mortality rates, so immunization is a way to save them. I cannot make the change the whole nation, whole world, but I can make the change in a small town, in a small working with the small people and make few lives safe. So that's the thing in my mind that I worked.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for that submission. Mohammed, in the chat box, you want to say what your reaction is there to Roshan's challenge?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir. I am also from Pakistan, and I faced the same issue that people were so reluctant in getting the COVID vaccine that they made fake certificates. Whenever there was an issue in schools or universities, when the administration were, asking the students to submit the certificates if they have got the COVID vaccine, they made fake vaccination certificate. I don't know that they were, had a fear that if they get the vaccine of COVID, then they might catch a severe fever. And it was a myth, I can say, that it was also said that if you get a pain or fever after the COVID vaccine, then you can't take paracetamol.
Okay, okay. Thanks for that submission, Mohammed. We're getting into a bit of technical.
Can I add one point?
Go ahead, Roshan.
During COVID, our government, our leader, like in a federal level, announced that if you are not getting vaccine, your SIM, the mobile SIM is getting blocked. And after that, we see the large number of people are coming for vaccination. So this is some kind of authority power of leaders to bringing the people accept vaccine. So we also saw this scenario in Pakistan.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm enjoying this. I'm loving how we're starting this conversation. This is exactly what we're talking about. And thank you so much to Roshan and Suzanne for kicking us off. I'm curious to see and hear. Sir Radhika?
Yeah, I'm from Nepal. Good evening. Just want to share that while we have a COVID vaccination started in beginning, there was it started from Ministry of Health and Population, initiation obviously from there with the support of WHO, UNICEF and other stakeholders. But what happened that what we learned that there was too much crowd in the COVID vaccination places. At the time, all the leaders or they were not able to think about the multi-sector approaches, the community engagement which we needed. So people wanted to have a vaccination, but they were afraid of obviously because the crowd and the major place to get infected with the COVID from the crowd here in hospital and other places. And people wanted to get vaccinated, but they're afraid to go in the place to get the vaccine because of the crowd. And then it's came to realize that we started to write in social media, whoever in the power, they understand, if we are not holding the chair, any authorized organization, then we started to write in social media, observing even me also, and so authorized body need to police, other multi-sector group to manage that crowd, because it's not on under, like we said, that not only the health people can do that. Their part is to the technical part, yeah, but that part is from like administration, police, other education sector. And then that in Nepal, that came to realize in a later phase. Then there was a meeting with the multi-sector group, and all these groups come also in the COVID vaccination side to take their responsibility, accountability. And then we seen that the people, more and more people, started to go to get a vaccine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Radhika. I think that's an important. I let Radhika share her perspective, because I think it's important to not forget that this is about people, right? And leadership is not something that's happening in a vacuum over there, and the organizing is not happening over there. This is about people. And so as we wrap up this section, and thank you so much for those interventions. We'll have more time to share our gaps, those leadership gaps. And if you would like to, you can do that on the chat box even now, as we proceed. But the main thing I want to offer you for today, that I wanted to offer you, was this idea of the balcony, and this idea of the gap, the leadership gap, so you can begin to articulate that, and in doing so, we'll be able to help each other narrow that gap through the various different techniques and campaigns, and other ideas that we'll be discussing through this course. So
there is time. One more interesting, I remember, the leadership gaps.
We'll have to hold that off. I'm sorry, Radhika. We're running out of time for today, but we'll come back to some of these discussions. I just want to leave you with some thoughts. Since we're talking about leadership, it's important that we share what it is we're talking about when we're talking about leadership. Sam, the next slide, please. I wanna offer these two definitions of leadership. And all our speakers today have made mention of a part of it, right? So the first one is definitional. Of course, we can discuss this and debate this throughout the course. I want to offer you that leadership is about mobilizing people, right? First of all, it's about mobilizing people to tackle challenges that have no known or obvious answers, right? What's the answer to coverage? What's the answer to getting people to accept generic medication, right? It's not there's no obvious answer there. You have to engage with people and understand why there's pushback, why they feel the way they feel. So leadership is about mobilizing people to tackle challenges that have no known or easy answers. And the second definition is leadership is about disappointing your own people at a tolerable rate for a purpose, right? Not just disappointing people, but disappointing your people at a tolerable rate for a purpose, right? Why disappointing people? Because people have expectations of you as a quote unquote leader, right? They expect you to have answers, right? They expect you to make things simpler for them, to lead them somewhere. And what we're saying is we understand that leadership is about mobilizing people. So there's a bit about that, that's understanding that part of it is your work, but a bigger part of it is other people's work, right? So when you refuse to take on the entire responsibility of fixing whatever challenge or closing that gap by yourself, you're disappointing some people because they expect you to close that gap. So I want to offer you those two definitions of leadership, and I'd love to hear what your responses and reactions to that are, and your own definitions of leadership. But for today, I think we will pause there as far as you know, the teaching pieces are. Before I hand over to Peja, I just want to give us a minute to look at the chat box and see what folks are saying in case I missed anything. Maluken, I got the number 2 definition. Very interesting. Yes, at the expense of your own people at times. It's for a purpose, right? So you don't just go around disappointing people. So what's the purpose for which you're disappointing those people, right? So expectations, plans, decision. Number 2 is a new learning. Leadership can be a lonely place. Okay, wonderful. I'm glad that this is resonating with some people and that there's some aha moments and some light bulbs that are coming on. So with that being said, I want to hand over to Peja to talk to us about organizing and how that wonderful activity kind of ties into leadership. We'll skip that framing slide, Peja. Over to you.
Thank you, Nakwo, and thanks for amazing conversation about this. If you can go 2 slides ahead, Sam, I think that would be wonderful. Yeah, one more. Yeah. So I think it was really interesting to hear the gaps that you identify, and we will continue to invite you to think about them. But what I've heard in the context of leadership, that all of those gaps, you know, that we were playing with here, they've required gathering and organizing groups of people, or as we could call it, like some type of community. And I just want to say, like, that the community here, we're using it in a really broad sense. Like, it's a group of people that needs to be mobilized and organized around a particular issue that currently is not doing that, or not addressing that issue, or not willing to engage. And our usual, you know, kind of like instincts would say and ask this question: well, if it's a community that needs to be moved, who is the president of the community? You know, who is in charge when we talk about community? So let's hear a couple of answers in the chat. Like, who is the president of the community? You know, like, if you have to engage one. Someone says the leader. The purpose is very important. Who is the president? Community leaders. Okay, interesting. Chairman. Okay, well, it could be. But I also seen communities where that is not the case. The influencer, all the stakeholders, political leadership. Yeah. If you go to the next slide. Well, the part of the problem here is that our mental model is always looking for a president of the, go back, Sam, one slide, is always looking for the president of the community. You know, that's our mental model, because we are used to work with organizations. We're used to work with organizations, and I can share the slides, Sam, if that's easier, so I can move them around as well. Let me just do that for a second. Can people see this? Yeah, okay. Let me move here. Slides are okay? Can people see them? Yeah. So we used to work with organizations, and that's how we kind of think about these things. And then obviously we will ask, okay, who is in charge here? Reality is that communities that you work with are not organized in that way. They are much more complex. They have different relationships, different connections. There's not one person or one group in particular that can be in charge. So it's a really different way of thinking. Well, if I'm working with a community, how do I work with that community? Because there's not one person that will solve all of your problems. So you're talking about multiple stakeholders that you have to somehow engage. And that is the essence of what we call the practice of community organizing. It's really not thinking about one person, but thinking about a group of people that you somehow want to get together so they can turn the resources that they have to address the challenges or changes that they need. So if you have a leadership gap, you're always looking at some kind of group of people, some kind of community that your job in a way as a leader is to enable them, as Nicole was saying, like to mobilize them to use their resources, their capacities, their talents, their whatever they have, to actually address and challenge the power, build the power that they need to create the change. And this notion of kind of like, how do you think about that is really, really important. And we want to offer you a way to think about as a community organizer, as someone who is doing that work. The first question, if you're doing that, is not what is the issue that I'm trying to address. But similarly to the gap that we are asking you is to define, it's like, who are my people? Who are the people that will be able to address this gap? Who are those people? So it's not what is their issue or what is my issue. It's really like, who are the people, so you can start seeing who do you need to organize? Who do you need to work with to address the particular issue? Then the next question, and this is where it gets kind of like even more complicated in a way, is like not what is my problem, but how do they see the problem? And we're going to spend a lot of time helping you map the stakeholders and then build relationships with those stakeholders so you can understand not how you see the gap, but how those people that you're trying to organize, how do they see the gap? And then finally, then once you know that and have some sense of that, you will never know exactly, but you will have a better sense as you engage those people. Then the question becomes like, what needs to happen so they can get the power, my people, those groups can get the power to actually address the change together. And when we talk about power, I wanna talk a little bit about that, because we're not talking about some kind of like a governmental power or whatnot. It's the definition that we use is just the ability to achieve the purpose. Ability, that's why we asked you the question at the beginning, when did you feel that you have power, is because we all have it. It's sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't, but it's the idea that you have the ability to achieve the purpose. And in this case, the question is like, are those people that I'm working with, that I'm mobilizing or organizing, do they have the power to address the challenge, or do they have the ability to achieve their purpose? As we've heard in the example, like if we get them together, if we kind of like mobilize those stakeholders together, will they be able to achieve what the shared purpose is? So it's kind of like this process of identifying who are my people, really then kind of like understanding how do they see the problem, how do they see what the challenge actually is, and then thinking about what can I do to enable them to address that problem or that challenge together, versus I'm doing it alone. So in a way, through this process, leadership becomes a less lonely place, still dangerous in many ways, but definitely less lonely, because you can start thinking about like working with other people to achieve that. And one other thing important about power, I think, is that power is not a static thing. It's not a thing that you have and that's it. It's a thing that is a relational. So let me ask you a question, and I will have to figure out how to see people here. If I have something that you need, who has the power? If I have something that you need, who has the power? If somebody can unmute and speak up. If I have something that you need, who has the power? Okay, go. Well, I don't know what is the name, but yeah, feel free to just speak up. I have something that you need, who has the power? Uche, go ahead.
So I think myself.
I have something that you guys need, who has the power? Point towards who has the power, you or me?
You.
Okay, I have the power.
I think, yeah, you.
If you have something that I need, who has the power?
Myself.
Okay. So it's really interesting that however you analyze power, it's always relational. It's never static. It's never like one person have it and whatnot. And I know this sounds like, oh yeah, but there are people in the society who have power. Yes, but they usually depend on a lot of other people to hold to that power. And if those people are not willing to engage with them, they will lose the power really, really fast. So there's always that relational element of the power that is critical, and you will see how that plays out in organizing and mobilizing people. So what I want to kind of like here to keep us some time, I want to talk a little bit about this process of kind of like what it takes to do this work. So if you have on one side disorganized group, have you ever been part of the disorganized group? Like, you know, the group that was not kind of like organized? I see kind of like some people nodding. Yeah, we know that. Like that sounds familiar. And those disorganized groups are basically having a sense of apathy. They have a sense of drift. Sometimes they have a kind of like reactions or inertia. But on the other side, there's an organized group. And you know, the organized group is about kind of like all the different sides of that, like having, you know, connection, and there's unity, and there's a purpose, and people are doing something together, and they're achieving this. So how do you turn disorganized groups into organized group? What's the secret sauce? What do you think? Any ideas? You can put it in chat or speak up. What is the way to turn this disorganized group in the organized group? Let's hear maybe from the voices we haven't heard so far. Sharing goals, the leader, purpose, trust, communications, yeah, all the important collaboration, all the important pieces. I would say the secret sauce is leadership. That's what it is all about. And there are certain practices that we're gonna work with throughout this program to kind of like demonstrate that for you, how that could work. One of them is practice of shared stories, like developing narratives, building relationships, creating structures and teams, working to develop strategy. How do you do some things together? And then taking action together. So there is a way to do it. And every community is different. Every group is different. There's no one single solution to this. But there are certain skills and practices that you can learn to actually start enabling disorganized groups to become more organized, and actually address the gap, leadership gap, by not just responding yourself and taking everything on yourself, but thinking about how do I enable other people to do this work with me, and how do we become from one person caring about that leadership gap, we become a community that cares about that leadership gap, that has a power to solve it. And in a way, that is the process that we're going to engage. And I want to show you an example of that. We're going to watch a short video. I hope the translators will be able to translate that as we go, some of the commentary in the video for our Francophone friends. We're going to watch a short video about the campaign that happened in Serbia, my home country. And the campaign was about moms who were not getting the salary on time. They were not getting, when they get pregnant and when they get a kid, families will not get the salaries on time. And they had a problem. And the problem was that they couldn't live their lives normally because of that, because the government was not paying what they were supposed to pay. So as you watch this example, you will see how instead of waiting for someone else to solve the problem, they realize that they actually have a community. They have a group of people that identified a similar gap, leadership gap in their thinking, and then they did some actions to create the change. And let's watch that example, and then we're going to debrief it together. So let me share my screen and the sound. Okay, so can people see the screen? Yes, and then let's play it.
This is a story about Dunja Ivanovic, a hard-working and fully employed mom. Last year, she got the most precious gift, a daughter, Natalia. But she couldn't, like a majority of moms in Serbia, enjoy these moments carelessly. No matter how cute babies are, they need a bunch of things, which moms and their families have to provide. In the first month, Dunya and her husband spent his whole salary. In the second month, they borrowed the money from their parents. In the third month, they realized they needed to take a loan. Why? In Serbia, new moms on maternity leave don't get their salary on time. Dunya wasn't the only one, but she was alone. What options did she have? To continue borrowing money and repaying debts in the future? To get a divorce and apply to become a contestant and marry Donald Trump? Or to join Serbia on the Move in their campaign, Rights for Moms? All of a sudden, she realized she is not alone. Their first act was to announce their presence. One morning, in every part of Belgrade, babies' laundry was hanged on main streets and squares. People started asking, why is it hanging there? To unveil the secret, they organized a gathering in front of the National Parliament on the morning of March the 8th, 2014. 150 people announced the beginning of the campaign, with a simple goal: to get 250 moms to have one-on-one meetings with 250 MPs, to convince them to vote for change of law, so moms get their salary on time. For Serbia, the chosen tactic was highly improbable. In 2 weeks, 250 moms sent over 250 emails contacting MPs. No response. One day, 30 different moms called office assistants and asked for 30 different meetings with MPs. Politicians realized moms are quite serious. One after another, they were persuaded. Those who didn't get the first meetings soon realized they needed to do it before it's too late, so they were calling moms for meetings. Moms decided to build the power in the parliament first and then go to the government. On the day before the meeting, they issued a press release saying that moms have majority in parliament. We only need the minister's support. Did he have any option? On the 1st of July, moms declared victory. Since the minister promised an amendment by the end of the year and invited the campaign's core team to work on the amendments. Who wants to mess with moms?
Yeah, the real question is who wants to mess with moms? So let's briefly unpack this and just like see. So at the beginning, Dunya, she was the first character. How did she feel? Like she felt the gap, that's for sure. Her family felt the gap. But what was happening, Raul? What was happening with her? Did she feel like she has the power to actually address this? Raul, go ahead. Or Siddiqui, let's hear a couple voices. Did Dunya happen? How did she uncover the power? Yeah, she was being lonely. That's true. Yeah, it was the meeting with others that they started building. They're realizing that there are things that they are, that there are other moms having the same experience. So they answered the question, who are my people? Well, it was the other moms. So then what else did they do? Do you remember what was the first action that they took? What was the action that they took together? Do you remember? Anyone?
Yeah. They had a gathering of themselves.
Yeah, but there was the action that they did on the streets. Do you remember? Yeah, they hung the laundry. Yeah, that was.
They start hanging their laundry from the street.
Yeah, that was pretty creative, you could say, because they said like, well, what do we have? We have the laundry of our babies. Let's put it on the streets so other people can see and ask the question, who is doing this? Why the laundry is on the streets? And what more importantly, they got attraction from other moms to start asking question, okay, what's going on here? And then they went to the parliament. And how did they approach the parliament thing? Like, what was the thing? Do you remember how they interact with the parliament? Did they just wait for the parliament to decide on changing the law, or what did they do?
They asked for meetings.
Yeah, they asked for meetings, and it was really interesting. They organized it in one day, and they started calling MPs. And like everybody's in shock. Like why are we getting so many calls from moms asking about these things? because they were organized right now. They had some power, if you want to put it that way. And then a couple of those politicians responded. Once they get to the half of the group, the rest of it started calling them and saying, like, can you please come to me? Because I also want to join this, because it became a shift in power. All of a sudden, those politicians needed those moms much more than the moms needed them, because they were organized and they realized, like, oh man, there's so many of them. And you know, like, you don't want to mess with moms in any country, I would say. You know, even for politicians, that was a tough one. So in many ways, you can see how the shift in power happened. And that's the whole point, you know, in doing organizing, is really thinking about how do you go from a disorganized group, let's put it that way, like a group that you know, doesn't have all the power or capacity. How do you go from there into something that has the power? And the beautiful thing about organizing is that, first of all, it's a problem. Then it does empower the constituency, empower the people. So the power is not somewhere else, but it's in your people, in the moms in this case. And then it develops leadership among those people. So when you think about how do you address your gap that we are asking you to do, we are going to try to support you to learn these skills, not to address the gap by yourself, but organize a community of people, stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, that could work with you to address that gap, build their leadership and capacity together, and then hopefully achieve the change that you want, as we were seeing in the video. So that is kind of like the essence, in a way, of the practices that we're going to engage in the weeks to come, is learning how do you change the gap and address the gap, but also how you're doing it with other people, mobilizing them to work with you to address that gap. And there are certain practices that can help you do that. One is the storytelling. That's the one that will happen next week. Building relationships, and we're going to spend 2 weeks on, first of all, identifying who do you need to build the relationships with, and then learn how to build the relationships with, and then finally developing a strategy, sometimes creative, as moms were thinking, but strategy that is grounded in the resources of your people, so you can get informal and formal power and authority to change the problems and address the gaps that you need. So with that, I will pass back to Nakulo to explain what you're going to do as a homework assignment. But I think this is the essence. This shift in power will be what you're going to learn in this next 7 weeks with us all together.
Thank you, Peja. I see Siddiqui and Roshan still have their hands up. Have you been? Have your issues been addressed? Roshan?
All right. So what we learned from the story, it's like an emotional connection, because no one is opposing the mothers. That will be the easy task to do. But when we go into the real scenario, even this kind of law in Pakistan, that's the scenario that I am belonging, or maybe some other LMICs, the men's community is starting and getting it that women should not have paid, and it's become a very big problem in terms of social, economical, even sometimes our religious barrier. Like some of the people started religious barrier. And sometimes these kind of demands, or these kind of to have a own right or using of power, become political, socio-economical, not corrected, even though people associated these things with the culture. So we are on the real life scenarios where we in a very small, like if a woman want to go to the PH for antenatal care, they are facing this problem. Yeah. Even though if a woman is working on a factory and we wanted to check up them on their own factory and with the clean mobile clinic, we face this problem, because if you take a one woman 1 hour, who will pay for this?
Yeah.
So please guide how we can adopt these strategies of power when people with have normative beliefs that never gonna change.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that we will not give you a prescription, as Nicole was saying. Like we will have to disappoint you on that, because this was just an example. In every context, every community is different. What we will try to do is give you skills and ways to look at things that you will see what's possible in your community, in your context, within your culture. And how to think about, not to replicate the same thing, because it's not going to work. That's the biggest mistake that people sometimes make, is they see a campaign working in one country and they expect it will work in another country. That community is not like that. Every community is different. There's a history. There's a lot of things that are at play. What we can do, and I think that's the promise, is to give you some ways of looking at things and some skills to engage your people. So together you can discover what is the right solution in our context. And that's the beauty for me personally of this work, is that there's so many different, campaigns, and we've seen so far like so many different ways of people actually building the power to make the change, even in the most dire circumstances, like even when things look like as completely impossible. But we are not going to give you a prescription how to do that. That's for sure. And I know Nicole will agree with that.
Yes, completely. Thank you, Peja. Wonderful. And in closing, let's go to the next slide, Sam. Your homework is to think about what is the gap you're trying to narrow, right? Having heard what we talked about today, about getting on the balcony, observation, interpretation, intervention, and this leadership gap. What is the gap that you are trying to narrow? And please go and submit that gap on the platform that Liz told us about earlier. And I'm going to invite Liz back to give us some of those details on what's next and what's coming. Liz?
Great. Thanks so much, Milk, and thanks for everyone's participation in today's first session of the course. It's just great to hear everyone's excitement and really looking forward, like I said before, to join you all on this learning journey. And like Milk said, please do visit the Boost Learning Group. We did set up a forum question where you can respond to the assignment there. We'll also have some pre-work for next week's session, which will again be on Thursday. Please note that there is a time difference due to daylight savings in the US. So the session will actually take place at 2 p.m. GMT. We've also provided links just so that you can see what time that is in your time zone, but just please be aware of that time change. Otherwise, we'll be releasing the pre-work a few days in advance of the session. We will send that pre-work through email as well as the Telegram group. So you should be alerted on several different platforms. And then I think last but not least, I guess, well, one, if you want to, while I'm chatting, put in the chat what you're taking away from today's session, that would be great. We're also going to send a link to the post-session survey just so we can get some free feedback from you all. We always are looking to improve, even if it's within the course. So if you have any feedback for us, we'll definitely incorporate that. Especially for our Francophone audience. I know this, again, is new, having French translation, so we definitely want to support you as well throughout the course. I think with that, I'll go ahead and close today's session since we're at 10:30 my time. But again, want to thank everyone for joining and look forward to continuing the conversation on the Boost Community platform. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You, our brothers.
Merci. Merci, gracias.
Nice to meet you again. Nice to meet you.
C'était important.
Merci,
Thank you.
Q&A now. Wow. Let's do it.
C'était important.
Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias a todos.
Bye.
Thank you.
Vegas. Vegas, merci.
Bye.
Vegas.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, 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 bye.
Wow, this is
Hello, sir.
C'était intéressant. C'était intéressant.
I wanted to say something.
Merci à vous. Merci à vous.
Am I
On
audible?
attend, on attend. On attend les
Am I
devoirs.
audible?
On attend les devoirs. Le lien pour télécharger le livre.
Nice, Mela. Great to see you both.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you guys. Today I have learned so many new things from this seminar and thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye. Mommy, who are they talking to?
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Sir, I want to say something. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to say that Telegram does not work in Pakistan. So I have an issue regarding, as you guys have made a Telegram group. So I cannot use that group. So I want to ask you guys that, can you guys please make a WhatsApp group so that I can have access to,
Yeah, we can work on making that group, and we'll try to copy the information over. We'll send the same information via email as well. So there's nothing new in the Telegram channel. It's just another way to reach out to folks. But yeah, we can definitely try to make that happen.
Actually, I am saying this as you guys are focusing on leadership. So as all the people are from different background, and so we should, I think, develop a network among ourselves so that we can know the history of every member and we can discuss our issues which we are facing with other members. That's why I was asking you, so that we can be in connect with during the whole week.
Yeah, so we created a group on the Boost community platform where you can chat with others in the course and share out your experiences. Did you receive that link?
No, ma'am.
Let me share it in the chat again.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. And yes, just a reminder that we'll be sending presentations via email as well. It'll take about a day or two for us to process the recording and get it up on YouTube. So we thank you for your patience in the meantime. And thanks, thanks Aisha for sending out the presentation.
Hello, Liz.
Hi, Joseph.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine. How was your journey?
It was good. My journey back was good.
Ah, that was nice. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions about the Boost community platform? All right. Well, you can always either message us at info@boostcommunity.org. So we'll try to respond within a day or two. And then otherwise, we look forward to continuing the conversation on the Boost community platform. So thanks, everyone. Oh, sorry, Mohammed, did you have a question? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.